It acts like a prompt. Okay, so here's the question it's given me. What was it about Hodene's story that resonated with you on a personal level? His statement about Christ's blood not being enough to wash away his sins is pretty rough. Why do you think so many people struggle to accept grace and forgiveness? How do you see tension between guilt and redemption playing out in modern faith, and what lessons can we take from St. Michael's life, failures, and faithfulness? Does that sound good, or does it sound like it's missing a blatantly obvious question?
No, I think all that's good. Something we can roll with. So we're recording. We'll cut this.
I doubt you're going to cut it. For everybody who's listening, I can pretty much guarantee you've heard the last 40 seconds because Kevin's not going to cut. Kevin's not going to cut. All right, so let's just get into it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, everybody. Thanks for coming to another episode of the Wandering Home Podcast. The Wandering Home Podcast is a place where we just kind of, how would you say it, Kevin? We're talking about faith in all of its different forms and facets, and it's me, Tyler, and my buddy Kevin, ex-pastor, now in the digital realm.
Yeah. That that almost sounds like something from Marvel. I'm an ex-pastor.
I just like to think about it with like a Mexican accent, you know. Ex-pastor.
Pastor.
It makes it kind of fancy.
It sounds like Nacho Libre. You don't think I know a buttload about the gospel, but I do.
Are they the Lord's chips? I love the scene where he's just smiling and he's like, now look at me. I get to wake up at 5 a.m. every morning, serve the people.
The greatest line from that movie is, for me, it's when they're talking about the soup that he makes, and he says, we've had diarrhea since Easter.
Yeah, dear Jesus. Yeah, that movie's a classic.
It's by far.
All right. Let's reel it in. Okay, guys. So what we're doing here is a little bit of an abbreviated episode. This is the third episode in a series of who knows how many of articles that Kevin's been writing on thewanderinghome.com. Brand new website. Check it out. But basically, these are kind of like, I would say they're more like journal entries than blogs. Almost like you could read through it as a daily devotional. I'm not kidding when I say it. Kevin's not a bad guy to read from either. I like this sentence structure overall. It's simple. He doesn't use big words.
Well, thanks, man.
It's easy to keep up with.
Just a simple guy,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I think what we're going to do right now is we're going to talk about something pretty interesting. This guy who I'm going to let you tell us his name is an adulterer and a martyr. And you've been talking about this guy for a couple of weeks in just trying to get me to talk to you about it. I could tell that you've been excited about it and you've been trying to get me to talk to you about it. So here we are.
Dude. So
I put it on a tee for you. Yeah, tell us about
one of the things about the Catholic faith for me is the saints. I love the saints. We have a communion of people that can pray for us, and not to get too deep in that theology, and maybe we'll talk about that later. But one thing that's really encouraging to me is the saints that aren't necessarily, well, all of them. There's a saying that every saint has a past, but that means that every sinner has a future. And so every saint has a past. I mean, when you start looking at the stories of saints, you find out that some of them had some really rough past. And Michael Hodene is one of them. He's a martyr from Vietnam and was canonized as a Catholic saint. And he's somebody that I find a lot of encouragement from. Obviously somebody that I asked to pray for me, because I find a lot of similarities in his life. I mean, he was, we've talked about this before, but in my story, but he's an adulterer, and I had committed adultery, and you feel that mark on your life, and like it's a stain that will never go away. And to find somebody that found hope in Christ, even after making a mistake like that, is, dude, it's encouraging.
So, Kevin, gotta ask you a question, and everybody's probably thinking it. So this guy had 2 kids outside of his marriage. Okay, not to be a dick or anything, but huge bummer for him, right? I can't imagine he did it on purpose. Huge bummer. But take me from the point where he gets from oops to beheaded. What's that? Like,
Yeah, so
there's got to be there's so much more to that
he was
story.
really a devout Catholic. I mean, there was really this internal battle in his life where he had made that mistake, and God, I mean, I can associate with that. You have two different worlds. You have a religious life, and then you have your, life where you stumble. And that's what happened with him. And so he winds up getting rounded up by, the officials in Vietnam, and they were obviously having a lot of persecution during the time of his life, and they were killing, anyone who had the faith, anyone who professed. Michael, a lot of people didn't believe that he would they thought he would succumb like some had and apostatize, not profess the faith, but he didn't do that. He held the faith until the end, which is the reason why he was canonized, is because he gave up his life for the faith.
I gotta stop you right there really quick, man. And I gotta tell a little story. I have a buddy of mine. His name's Davey. He's a plumber. Okay, he came over to my house to fix. How do I talk about it? The shower valve. Anyway, he was telling me a funny story, dude. You got to hear this. So there was like tornado season in Alabama, and he lives in a area that's like really bad for tornadoes. He lives in Harvest. And so he said that he got his family all down to the basement like after the alarms were going off the other night. And then he just went outside and stood outside of his front door. And his wife was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Fucking take me." Like, I'm waiting for the tornadoes, he said. He's like, "I'm sick of this shit."
You know,
He said that day he had worked like 10 hours, and his wife called him to come home, and he thought, he might get lucky, and she just had like more plumbing work for him to do at the house or
but he
something.
was
And, like
ready.
he's got put to work
Poor
all day, and he
guy.
was like, "You know what? I'm just gonna go walk out into this tornado."
I don't think, so Michael, I don't think he was like wanting to die,
Yeah.
as our boy might have been.
You don't think he looked over to the guy on his left and he was like, "Dog, I already got my second lady pregnant with the second kid on the way.
No, I don't
And
think so.
I'm really fucking up, dude. Like, I'm really, really screwing up lately." You don't think that's what it was?
No, I think that I wrote in the blog that one thing that he said, God, and dude, I can relate to this. He said that he felt like if the ocean was full of Jesus's blood, that it couldn't wash away his sin. I have felt like that before. I have felt so dark and so sinful that, to ask him to show me mercy was a disrespect to him, not realizing that Jesus died for that, and that the actual
That's
disrespect is
like
to
the
not
point.
allow him to do that. But really feeling like, oh my God, like there's no way that I could ask him to do this. I don't think this is possible. And Michael felt that way. And he only felt like the way that he could get to heaven was to be a martyr. Now, I believe later in his faith, he came to understand the grace of God and to know that that wasn't true, that God was always there and God was always, wanting to show him grace, which, that you hope for. You hope for anyone that's been in that situation can come to that. And I have come to that by God's grace, that understanding. But man, it took me a long time. And a lot of people would say around me that they could see that it was hard for me to forgive myself for the things that I had done.
Yeah, hey, I've said it before, if you would have grown up Methodist, you wouldn't be so hard on yourself.
Yeah, maybe.
I think it's that I think it's that's the way you grow up, man. Like, it really has an impact on how bad you beat yourself up about stumbles and trips and
Yeah,
falls.
and so Michael came to understand the grace of God. He embraced it, and then when he got, wrangled up with all the Catholics in Vietnam, he held on. I think he was tortured for like 10 to 15 days before they beheaded him. And probably, I think it is probably the most badass story of someone dying for the faith. I mean, obviously, I can't necessarily say it's the most badass, but it is a badass story because there's a bunch of them where guys were just so brave and giving their life.
Can you imagine that it says he got on his knees in prayer, or he smoked a cigarette, fixed his hair, and then he prayed. Now, do you imagine that to be like a Marlboro Red short, and he popped the car, or do you think he like how long ago was this, right? Like he probably rolled that cigarette
Yeah,
by
he probably
himself.
rolled
Can you
that
imagine like
cigarette.
being at the guillotine? He could probably do it one-handed. It sounds like he's the kind of guy. His baby's mom. Anyway, I don't want to be a dick because the guy's a saint, but I mean, it just seems like he. Do you want to move to the section of the podcast where we turn to Reddit and ask it questions about the topic?
About Mike?
Yeah, I did it. I went online. I'm here in front of Google right now. Really, I mean, nobody's really talking bad about this guy because he's a saint. The mysterious straight line that unites 7 shrines dedicated to Saint Michael. This is not Saint Michael
No, that's
Hodini.
probably
How do you
St.
say his
Michael
last?
the Archangel.
It is Saint Michael the Archangel,
Yeah.
which we should talk about.
Yeah, St. Michael Hodenay, I think that the way he goes down is, dude, I mean, that's what could be more manly than that?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, you're just,
I mean, if you were doing it in like a full leather jacket, maybe that's pretty badass. I don't know. I don't know.
yeah,
If he like rode up on his motorcycle and then smoked a cigarette, you know what I mean? Just like, all right, y'all, I'm here, whatever. Because it talks about how he was into the martyrdom thing. I mean, he felt like martyrdom was what it needed. And okay, so here I am on Google. It says something interesting that we haven't talked about yet. He was one of the few trusted officials who traveled globally to conduct trades with other countries.
yeah, he sold silk.
So this guy was a badass and he was super rich. This whole time I've just been thinking he was a guy like you and me who had a badass ending and, became a saint. But this guy, you know,
No, he was a
this guy was
businessman.
had some prestige behind him.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
was
yeah,
a
yeah.
businessman. He had some prestige. He was
Wow.
successful, wealthy. Yeah,
I
and
bet that made the papers.
yeah, he gave his life. And, that's, I think the important thing for like with his story, obviously the Bible says that we're surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses who are cheering us on. That's one of those guys. Michael Holden Hay is a guy that I want cheering me on. He's one of those, when I hear his story, I'm like, I want that guy praying for me. I want that guy cheering me on because he knows me. He knows my story. He knows what I've felt before. And, it's a great
Yeah.
person to petition for me. And that's my perspective as a Catholic. If you were a Protestant reading that story, you could still glean from the story of his bravery and martyrdom. And you could say, this is somebody that I should emulate. And I think, you know, we're gonna kind of talk about more saints like this. I think the reason why we started this podcast and blog was to talk about faith and redemption and failure and overcoming it. But he's a story of that, and he has a story of that. But there are so many more that do, and they lived hard lives. Some of them experienced a lot of failure and setbacks, but they never gave up, and they were tenacious. And through God's grace, they were. And I think that is something that all of us can really be encouraged by, especially for those like me and, others that have faced some really bad setbacks in life. That's a homie
Yeah.
right there, man.
Yeah. Yo, it's crazy. This article doesn't talk about his bastard children, but I will tell you what's interesting. I should pop this up on the screen, but it's kind of it's not a leather jacket, okay? But he did choose death in his like official robe, which, if you can see my screen, looks something like this. I suppose. So
Yeah, I saw that picture.
that to me is kind of cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
And they have the I imagined him more like a biker dude with boots on. Like, I think you had talked about making a shirt where he's got like one foot up on the wall and he's leaning up against it with a cigarette in his hand, like, you know.
I think that would
But
be awesome.
anyway, it was 1700s in Vietnam. So it was nothing like the Americanized version that I have in my head. And just here at the end, it says he was petitioned to the Vatican for sainthood in 1867. Is this beatified 1900? Beatified? I don't know that word. And they still have some of his stuff at the Vatican. They have one of his official robes, which I'm hoping is a clean one, is, you know, not the one that he decided to wear that day. And they have a chair that
Yeah, that would
he
be awesome.
had
I would love to
used
see
before.
that, man. I would love to go to Rome and see that.
Have you ever seen the movie Euro Trip?
Yes.
Where he's like, the Pope is dead.
I don't,
And then it's like, we found a new Pope, and it's the kid.
dude,
Anybody who hasn't seen Euro Trip, you know, I don't know, go to Amazon, look it up.
I don't think I've ever, well, I guess it's been forever ago.
This isn't where I parked my car. That's the line that I use all the time.
Euro Trip.
Scotty doesn't know. Probably everybody knows about Scotty doesn't know, but doesn't know it's from Euro Trip.
There's a ton of movies like that that are just incredible, you know?
Edit the outro to this episode with Scotty doesn't know
Scotty doesn't know.
for me. Yeah. And it's just like in the background. I think I have background cancellation off right now, but so I can't play it. But
Scotty doesn't know.
here, I can read the lyrics. I'm kidding. I'll spare everybody.
Yeah.
So look, man.
We're just going to play it at the end.
Yeah. You know, if we can have more episodes like this where we just talk about these saints, I think that's cool. We did it in 20 minutes, which was kind of the goal. So
yeah,
I hope everybody enjoyed it.
Yeah, heck yeah.
I mean, what are you going to do, right? If you didn't enjoy it, you know,
Yeah,
get out
turn
the
it off.
kitchen. Yeah. I mean, now's the time. Turn it off now.
Turn it
It's
off
over.
now. It's been over. Yeah, if you don't like it, don't watch us. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I have nothing else to say. All right, cool. Well, let's wrap this one up, and I guess we'll talk to everybody just as soon as we can make another episode.
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right, rock and roll, man.
Mercy, brother. I think that was funny.